In this video, I'm going to show you how to send automatic email alerts for each and every new podcast episode or blog post that you release using ConvertKit. Now, this is one of the paid features of ConvertKit, which is an email marketing software that allows you to send out multiple emails to multiple people at the same time, and it also allows you to do certain automations, one of which I'll be going through in this video. So I signed up for ConvertKit's paid plan because of these types of automations. Also because ConvertKit position themselves in the market as the email marketing software for creatives. So that would be like content creators, influencers, artists, and stuff like that. And so therefore, when I was decided to do something that is like more of a personal hobby of mine and more in that creative space, I chose to use ConvertKit because, like I said, they seem to be the go-to email marketing software for this genre or industry. And so with my podcast that I have, I decided that I would create an email list and have it for the main purpose of people getting alerts through their email whenever I do a new podcast episode, instead of depending on whatever podcast player app that the person uses to listen to my podcast. All right. And so if you go into the back end of your ConvertKit account and you have a paid plan, you can, like I said before, you can only do this with a paid plan. You go under automate and you will see the option saying RSS feed. Now, the first time that I clicked on RSS feed and they showed me what it means, I didn't know what RSS stood for, which is real simple syndication, but I was using RSS feed for my podcast. I just knew it to be like the way in which the podcast hosts, which again, if you do want to have a podcast, almost each and every podcast host you have to pay for. I think there's only one or two free ones, but it comes with you having to either put ads on your podcast. So it's a give and take, and they take this RSS feed, and that is what all the podcast players kind of use to be able to pull your podcast episodes from the RSS feed that is hosted by your podcast company, whichever one you decide to go with. I use Captivate, which is based in the United Kingdom. So with RSS feeds, you can have your podcast RSS feed being pulled, or you could have the RSS feed for your blog posts if you are a blogger, right? So the two of them, it pulls slightly differently because the URL is slightly different. So for example, if you have a podcast and you don't have a website, you have a podcast, the RSS feed, when you click add feed, you just copy and paste the RSS feed from your podcast host, which would be in the back end of that platform, and you copy and paste it into the URL box that they have here. Or if it is you have a blog and you want to use the RSS feed for your blog, that is just your website URL /feed, and then that is what will pull the feed for your blog post. So in ConvertKit, you can do a single email based on each new podcast episode or blog post that is published, or you could do a digest, which is just an email that you would send sometime in the future that will pull multiple podcast episodes or multiple blog posts into one email. Now you can decide whether or not, based on how you set up this email, the email template that it would use. You could set up the subscribers that would get this type of automatic email, because of course with these type of email marketing softwares, you can segment your list and tag your subscribers and group them into different categories. So you can do that type of fine-tuning selection here as well. And if it is you want to leave it so that it would generate the email whenever a new podcast episode or a new blog post is released, but it doesn't send it out until you come in and do whatever changes or fine-tuning that you want to do before the email is sent out. You could set it up that way as well. However, the one thing that I notice is that when I pull the information, so from the feed, the podcast feed, my RSS podcast feed, the information will pull exactly as it is from the source. So what that means is all of this automation type stuff is done with coded blocks. So you could say, okay, I wanted to pull the title, the date, the author, and the description. So it's going to pull that entire description however you wrote it, whether it was on your blog or in your podcast episode. And so if you have full-on links in there and it looks kind of ugly, you can't fix it because it's one piece of code that pulled that whole thing. And so that to me is a major downside, because it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't look appealing, and you can't even format it. So it's just this way big chunk of text with the full links within it. It doesn't look too pretty. And so that was one of the things that I realized, well, it kind of looked like I'll have to just draft up the email myself in the template that I want, and then just copy and paste the description as I see fit, and then put in the social links using the blocks and the templates within ConvertKit itself so that it looks better. And so that's one of the things to me that I realize is kind of like a downside, and that's just something to keep in mind if you are thinking of, oh, I will just automate this email. You really have to think about how the email looks to the person reading it, because you want it to look appealing, and you want it to be presented in a professional way. I mean, that's what you're paying for with these types of email marketing softwares, right? So ConvertKit isn't the only email marketing software with which you can do automations. In this video coming up next, I show you some automations that I did with MailerLite for my business. And if that's something you're interested in, you can click on the video right next to me.